Hello, I'm Michael Grassia, art director for Pronto Comics. I'm here with.
Dawn Griffin of zfcomics.com.
Okay. Hello, and thank you for being with us.
Oh,
Um,
thanks for inviting me.
um, so, before we get into all the fun details about your comics and stuff, why don't you just tell me a little bit about yourself? Maybe what you do with comics, maybe a day job if you have that outside of comics. Like, what's your art background, influences, things like that.
Okay. Well, I've always been into drawing, art, comics, that type of thing. And I went to art school, knowing that I would need a plan B. So I got a degree in illustration and graphic design, and that is, I still am working on my plan B. So I'm a graphic designer by day, work for a snack foods company, do packaging and logos and literature, things like that. And by night I'm a cartoonist and freelance illustrator, and basically I just never stop.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. So let's talk about your webcomic. It's called Zorbert and Fred, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Zorfbert, but it's okay.
Zorfbert. I'm sorry.
It's an alien name, and no one
Yes,
can pronounce
I
it.
can.
So
I get.
you're
I
part of the
forget.
club.
I always forget the F.
Yeah.
So was that the first comic you did, or how did that come about?
It wasn't my first comic. The first comic I had, I started when I was 12 or 13, and it basically like evolved into different things. I used the same characters but kind of grew them up and put them in different situations, and so it was a long process. It winded up being your obligatory type of college kid type of comic, playing video games or whatever. Like everyone seems to have done that type of comic at some point. So it was that when I was in college, and just a college grad too. And I retired it in, let's see, 2005, I'm thinking, is when I retired it. And then I started developing ZNF, Zorfbert and Fred, when I was a couple years later, maybe a year. And I started posting in 2007 online.
Okay. Wow, 2007. So that's how many years now? That's 9 years.
Yep.
9 years, and you announced earlier in the year that you're going to be ending the strip.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was coming to an end, and you just know when you've been doing something long enough, and you feel like you've told the story, and there's nothing else. There's not a lot left that you can give to it that's going to do it justice, and you don't want to beat a dead horse, and you don't want to get to a point where it feels like you're doing that. So I have other ideas for other projects I want to work on, but I decided to be upfront with my readers and just let them know this is my plan, and I'm very much a person that plans things out like crazy. So at the beginning of the year, when I came back from my seasonal hiatus, I made the announcement and said, come July, I will post my last comic online, and going out with a big bang. I'm also going to do a Kickstarter for ZNF plushes, and it will coincide. The Kickstarter will also offer you the option to pre-order book 4. So there'll be a lot tied into that, and in June and July, it's just going to be a whirlwind of insanity. But like I said, I want to go out with a bang. It's going to come with a lot of work, but it should be exciting.
That's cool. Very cool.
Thank you.
So let me ask you this, because at some point I'm going to ask you about some tips for aspiring artists and stuff. What was it like focusing on one strip for 9 years? I mean, you said you had ideas for other stuff. Was it difficult to not want to leave it at any point to go and do other work, or you were just like, no, these are my guys, and I'm sticking with it, and I love it.
Oh, that's a good question, actually. I like that. I haven't been asked that yet, I don't think. I think it's particular to the person, because I know a lot of people that do these one-off, maybe one little graphic novel or one comic issue, and then they move on to something else, and they just have ideals like barreling at them light speed constantly.
Yeah.
And I think that other people like to come up with a character development and stick to those characters and tell a long story, and are okay with that, and pulling them out of that to do something else, like they're very tunnel focused, type of people. And I think I fall into the latter there, because I've always, the first comic I did, I worked on for what did I say? I forget now.
Uh,
But longer than I've worked on CNF. I mean,
mm,
the same characters but different situations.
mm,
But I have an incredible focus, so I don't think it's that hard. It just once you get down to it and you kind of realize like you have other ideas, you've been inspired by other things, and you want to try that, and it took that long for me to stumble on something else. And the next thing, you know. I'm actually laying out the next thing because it's not going to be a comic strip, and usually comic strips you think about being having a long lifespan,
mm,
and so a subject that you can just talk about forever, and that's
mm.
the ideal comic strip. Well, the next thing I'm going to work on is a graphic novel, so it's going to have, a beginning and an end,
Okay.
and this going to be all planned into it.
All right.
So I think that the next thing is going to feel really short to me. When I finally get it done, I'm like, that's it. I want
Okay.
more, and then I can decide do I want to make a series, but I'll have an easy way out if I want to do something else after that.
Okay.
So I kind of like that plan. I kind of like the fact that it's,
Yeah.
there's going to be a cut and dry. So I'm going to give that a try.
Okay. That's cool. Now, I also, I've seen you at shows, and I've connected with you through Facebook, so I've seen some of your advertisements. You want to talk about the children's book you've done, or? I
Oh,
mean,
sure.
yeah, tell us a little bit about that, because I see more advertising for, ZF Comics than I do for your children's book sometimes.
Okay. Well, there's an obvious explanation behind that.
Okay.
Because I did actually the Abby's Adventure series, which is I work with a writer on that,
Okay.
and that came out around the same time I started CNF. It was just like all at once, and I connected with this writer, and we just decided, hey, let's give it a shot, And at that time, I was really new and starting out, and I thought this would be a good project to work on. And I've never worked with a writer. I think I need the experience there, and so I gave it a shot. We did 4 books together, and I think at this point she feels as though she's done. Like I think that I don't know what she was expecting, but I think just life got crazy for her, and she can't do any more books. So that's why I'm not promoting it as much.
Okay.
And it's not fully my project either. So
Okay. Okay.
and we have a publisher, and we work with them back and forth, and it's just all kind of a right time, right place.
Yes.
Even when you are published.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no end all be all. Once you get signed on to this, then it's a cakewalk. That never happens.
Okay.
Except for the extremely lucky.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even matter about talent. It's just luck, I swear. Just right time, right place.
All right.
But that's why it was a good exercise, and I'm glad I did it. And they're really good books. Like they're wonderful books, and people that read them want them all.
Oh, that's really great.
Yeah.
Wow. So let's talk about let's talk about what's it called, the Webcomic Alliance, which you're part of,
Yes.
and tell us about how that started, how you got involved with that, because what you do is you really help a lot of aspiring artists with knowing how to put your webcomic together. With you, I know you have videos with drawing tips and like publishing tips. You've talked about conventions and how to set your table up. So I mean, you give a lot of advice. How did you get involved with webcomics? Were you one of the founders? Please explain a little bit about that.
Okay, sure. I was one of the founders, and this year will be our 5th anniversary. And the other guy that's with the Alliance right now, Byron Wilkins, he's one of the founders too. And we had 3 more: Ken Drab, Antoine Gagnon, and Kurt Sasso of TGT Webcomics and or TGT Media now. And we all just kind of came together and felt like we wanted to share our experience and kind of help others. Like, okay, here's what I did. Everyone asks, I'm going to my first convention. What should I do? And so, we started feeling like we were writing down our like kind of like a diary experience. Like, here's what happened. Here's what I did. And next time I'm going to do this, 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 this. And we're like, I wish I could share this with people, And we thought this would be a good forum to like basically say, there's no one way to success. Yeah, you have to find your own path. And here's 5 completely different artists, and here are their paths. And we have a podcast that it seems to be the most popular aspect of what we do. And I think that's what people really like, is that we will debate each other and say like, no, I don't think that won't work for me because of A, B, and C, and and just kind of discuss the differences, and try to be open to the community and allow them to voice their concerns. There's so much to be learned, and just reviews of sites, things like that. Like, who uses what printer, and some good experiences and bad experiences, and I think it's really good, and we just like to help. We just like to allow people to skip over the same mistakes we made.
No, it's great. It's a great service you provide, and from what I understand, everything is free, so you're not asking for money for it. So.
No, we may develop like a Patreon page or something at some point, but yeah, we just wanted to offer it for free. It was just when we were starting out, there wasn't a lot out there, and I think that we're like, wow, I wish we had us when we were, when we were starting out,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are very thankful of that, and I mean, it is our advice and our podcast are worthwhile, but at this point, I feel like their worth doesn't need to be monetary for us. We are networking and building a readership. I mean, a lot of people find my comic, find my work, or are just willing to reach out a hand to help me because of the Alliance, because I helped them. And I think that is, at this point, more beneficial than if we started putting up paywalls and asking for money or whatever. And a Patreon's a great way because maybe we'll give you more content. But it's a good way to say, if you really like us, donate. Because we do have people that will contact us and say, hey, how can I donate to you guys? You guys are awesome. I love your podcast, blah, blah, And so that would be a good way to do it without putting up a paywall and blocking all access unless you pay. So, yeah, maybe one day we get to that point where it just becomes so much work that we have to. But I don't think at this point. I feel like the benefits are already there. So.
Oh, that's cool. That's very good. The next thing I wanted to move on to was, I know the new book, one of the books you worked on, you contributed to Rise.
Yes,
and I wanted you to talk about that, because I think, from the way I've heard about it, it is a great book, and I really can't wait to read it myself. But I think what it's about is very it's obviously a good cause, and a topic that should be discussed. So why don't you tell us about Rise?
Well, it's called Rise: Comics Against Bullying, and it was put together by a bunch of artists and writers, many of them well-to-do in the field, some of them more aspiring, and it just kind of became a who knows who. Like, everyone just kind of suggested people and brought in people that they found were good, and it didn't necessarily mean that you had to, well, they work for Marvel, they work for DC, didn't have to be that. And so someone that I met on the con circuit during Comic Cons suggested my name. And I think she's an editor for the entire series too, Erica Schultz. So she suggested the name, or my name, for this, and I was really happy to oblige. And I think they really liked my art for the story because I was asked to do a cover. And so I'm super happy to be a part of this series because it's such a good message, and so many kids out there, deal with bullying on just everyday basis. And I think a lot of us cartoonists, when we were younger, we might have dealt with a lot of the same type of bullying. Maybe not to the extent that some kids do today, but we all dealt with it. We've kind of been there, and when you've been there, you can write about it. You can draw stories for it with a little bit more knowledge, and it's just like any of those other good, like the video series, the It Gets Better series that went around. Like, that was so good too. It's good to have like kind of a big picture idea of. I know it's not easy now, but just know that you're working towards something, and I think the comics do that too. And I was a part of another project, Cul-de-sac, as a comic strip. The guy, Richard Thompson, that draws and writes it, has Parkinson's, and he's not doing so well. He actually had to retire his comic. And fans came together and put out this wonderful anthology of all sorts of, like, basically tribute work, fan art, pinups, whatever, for all his characters. And you basically submitted what you wanted, and they chose their favorites. And one of my pieces was picked, and I was thrilled to be part of that too. And sometimes, like I said, with the Alliance, we're not earning money, and with some of these projects, I'm just submitting stuff because I like the project and I want to be a part of it. And it's nothing to do with, well, I deserve money and I need to be paid. And there's plenty of things I get paid for. I do well at Comic Cons. I get freelance work, but there's certain things that go above and beyond, and you feel like you need to use use your talents for good, you know. And I'm really glad to be a part of those too, and really excited to see. I just got my copies of Rise in the mail, and they look amazing. They're really nice, like a beautiful glossy cover.
Mhm.
They look really wonderful. So
That's cool.
I just look at that, and I'm just like, wow, it's wonderful to be a part of. Like, I'd be disappointed if I saw that and I was like, oh man, I wanted to do, like, and I'm part of it now, so
Yeah,
that's wonderful. And it's just networking, and that makes a big difference.
yeah, no, it does. I like to work on projects. I do a lot of stuff personally with with children, and I try to do stuff with animal causes and stuff, and I'm always donating to things for that. So
And you feel it. You
yeah.
feel like I did. This was really important. This is more important than earning money. Yeah,
Mhm.
in some cases, that it
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
You have to have that balance, and I think that like I said, there's a payback that's not monetary.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. Well, I only have two more questions for you, really. The first one was, for all the aspiring writers and artists out there, what kind of advice would you give them on anything about comics, whether it's drawing, writing, going to publish, whatever? I mean, I know you have so much information on Webcomics Alliance, and I'll make sure to add a link in the description on YouTube so people can go to that.
oh
But
yeah, that'd be
but
good.
but for you specifically, what kind of advice, like off the top of your head right now, would you give someone?
I'm trying to think back on things that I, like they have that. What would you tell your younger self?
Hmm.
So I'm thinking back about things like that, and I think what it took me forever to just start drawing comics for ZNF.
Hmm.
Like I probably thought about it for a year because I'm like, well, I have to start. It has to be a perfect start, and it has to be this, and it has to be, like I had all these ideas of, of doing that. And I know so many artists that, well, I want to make a web comic, and I have this idea, but I'm not really sure. I'm not really sold on it, and it just becomes this waiting for it. And I think my advice is get over it. That's not going to happen. Just draw, and you don't have to post stuff online. You can just draw for yourself, and maybe you'll find a groove where you start hitting it and you're like, okay, I think I found it. I think I'm ready to share this, and it's hard to get past that, especially when you're a planner like me and you want to have everything planned out perfectly, and then you know what you want, and then you can share it. But it doesn't happen, especially with a brand new concept. It doesn't always happen that way. Usually, it doesn't happen that way. You just have to start drawing, start getting it out, and it's like therapeutic,
Yeah.
Um, so for me, that was the one thing. But I also would like to reiterate the message behind the alliance is there's no one way. Someone could tell you, oh, well, if you just do this and you draw a comic about that and you post it in this area, you'll be famous in an
Mhm.
instant. Or someone might seem to have all the answers, but it might not necessarily work for you.
Mhm.
There's so many different aspects of a comic and what makes it good. And some of it is the drawing style, some of it's the writing style, some of it's the characters, the concept, but then you also have these intangible things that are like, what year is it, or what's going on in pop culture right now, or
Yeah.
there's just so many aspects to that it's just in the end what it comes down to is do you like it and do you enjoy it, and is it good for you personally, regardless of money, regardless of fame, regardless of all that. Take all that away. Would you do it anyway? And if you wouldn't, this isn't the business for you, or that's not the concept for you to work
Mhm.
on. Work on something you would do anyway.
Okay.
So
No,
that would be my best advice.
no, that's great advice actually. And my last question: is there anything? I know we talked about Rise, but is there anything you want to promote, website wise, show wise, coming up? I mean, anything you want to talk about? How people can find you?
Sure. Well, my next show is my first show.
Okay.
It's next weekend, and it's called the Great Philadelphia Comic Con.
Okay.
Not to be confused with Wizard World. It's actually kind of a good like sister con to Wizard World because
Mm-hmm.
Wizard World's so big and so pop culture, and comics are kind of like a backseat
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of those shows. But don't get me wrong, I do really well at Philly Wizard World too. But this is a great sideshow for it, not to make it sound like a
Yeah.
circus act, but it's a great like sister show because it's smaller, it's fan made, it's not like a big corporate takeover. There's a big focus on comics. I think that people that don't like Wizard World for those reasons would like this show. So I think it's pretty cool, and I know the organizers, so I'm very excited for it. And I'll be debuting my new coaster designs that I've
Yes, actually, that's
developed.
something. I'm sorry to interrupt. That's something
Oh, sure.
I meant to ask you about, and I'm gonna have to go back to one of the questions that I forgot. You're a very crafty person, and I wanted to know where are your
Half
ideas
day.
coming from? Are you making these things up? You stealing them off Pinterest or something? I mean, where do you get these ideas for all these like really cool, um, you know, like merchandise? That's the word I was looking for. Sorry.
Well, actually, with the coasters in particular, I do every year for Christmas because I'm poor. I basically have to come up with a crafty gift that I can give to people, which
Yeah.
ends up being usually the favorite gift anyway.
Hmm.
And so this year, just jumping on Pinterest, like, what can I make that's cheap and easy and won't be a huge headache? And I found make your own photo coasters. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, cool. So I started making all these like I would make 3 for each person, and like 2 were like just photos I could grab off of Facebook. So it was really easy, but people loved it. And then the third one, I would make a funny meme coaster.
Hmm.
So it has like a picture with like the Helvetica big type on top of it, and would make something funny that was really fitting for them.
Hmm.
And people loved it. I had one person cry over theirs, like like
Wow,
people
that's great.
loved their coasters. So I'm like, wow, that was really easy. And now that I got the hang of it, what could I do for conventions? Because I bet a lot of people I haven't seen a lot of coasters at conventions.
Yes, I agree with
So
you.
that's part of it. I'm always looking for something that will stand out and be different because there's so many of us artists in Artist Alley now. And
Yeah.
it's like everyone has prints and everyone has books. And, so what can I do that will, in addition to those things, grab
Hmm.
attention? So my coaster series, there's 10 of them, and it's like a parody design where I take a beverage logo, whether it be like beer, liquor, whatever, and combine with a superhero in
Hmm.
like a punny way.
Yeah.
So there's instead of Kahlua, there's Kal-El Ua.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So I just
Yeah.
kind of mash them all together and make them work. And I think it'll be fun to see how they take off.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. I mean, when I saw you post about those, I was just so impressed, and I'm like, how come I didn't think of something like this? And I see things like that all the time from like with all the stuff you're posting. It's just so crafty all the time that you're doing. So
I
it's
really
really
don't
cool.
think of myself as a super crafty person. I guess I'm surrounded by other people
Hmm.
um, that do other things. Like they might knit or crochet and make all these like really cool articles of clothing and take forever, and they make really cool jewelry. And I'm just trying to find the cheapest, easiest, fastest thing. Like
Yeah.
it's all about production to me.
Yeah.
Like how can I get this done and get my cost down? And so it's partly that. And these coasters might end up being the bane of my existence if all I'm doing all the time is making coasters. But I'm trying to. I came up with a plan B because a lot of people are asking, ship them to me. I will pay for them. I'm like, oh Lord.
Yeah. No.
But I ordered some online from Overnight Prints, which I highly recommend. One of my favorite sites for making like my bookmarks that I
Hmm.
pass out. But they actually have coasters, so I ordered like double-sided coasters from them for
Hmm.
pretty cheap because I've been with them for so long.
Hmm.
And so anybody who orders online, I can ship those out, and they're lighter.
Yeah.
So it'll save them. Just every little detail.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Did you want to continue promoting stuff, or you think you got it all?
Other than that, my portfolio website is dawngriffinstudios.com. Has everything.
Okay, that's really cool. Well,
Thank you.
thank you for taking the time to be with us here, and
Oh, sure.
maybe we can talk again on a future interview.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah,
Yeah.
I welcome any kind of interviews. Talk with other artists. It's great.
Okay.
And good luck to
Yeah.
all the minions there drawing away, cursing the fact that they signed up for this in the first place.
Yeah, I think a few of them are.
Cursing only one person. I mean, no.
All right. Well, thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
All
Good
right.
luck.
Thank you. Bye.